the fact of the matter is we overpaid by my calculations, $2 million. Rockwell was not appalled enough. They were more pissed off that it had been brought to light. I want to tell you a Rockwell story, okay? Real quick. So I worked, and I've told this story before. I just can't remember if I know I haven't told it in a podcast. So if you've heard this before, please forgive me. But, you know, one of the reasons that I am so hard on Rockwell, and there are many reasons, okay? I could give you probably 36 examples over the course of my career, but this is the most egregious example, okay? When I worked for the end user, so I worked for the end user for the first 10 years of my career, 10, 12 years. I worked in a salt mine, and then I worked in a printing facility. Then I worked in a steel facility, rolling mill, and then I worked in tier 1 automotive. When I went from the steel mill, we were a Rockwell house, okay? We had, if you guys aren't familiar with how Rockwell does their business, basically how they go to market, they basically they sign distributors who they are literally the only distributor within a specific region, which they call AR. They call it an AR region. That's the only distributor in that region. They're the preferred distributor, and they're the only one who can offer quantity discounts to anybody who lives within that geographic region. Okay. So when I worked for the steel company that I worked for, Nucor Steel, I was in like northern New York, northern central New York. And I was under one distributor. The distributor that I worked with in the northern part of the state was very like customer focused. Okay. So they weren't yet, right away. Rockwell is not unique in doing this, by the way. Of course not. Schneider does the same thing. Siemens does something very similar. All of the major companies do this type of thing, but none of the emerging companies do. Okay. None of the emerging industrial companies do this. Why? Because everyone's identified that it's a problem in our industry. Okay. It's a way of siloing data and exploiting customers and stuff there. And I'm going to give you the example here. So my distributor, when I was with the steel company, was a very pro customer distributor. Okay. So Rockwell puts a shit ton of pressure on their distributors. I mean, Rockwell really operates like the mob. I mean, in a lot of ways, and I don't mean that pejoratively. I don't mean that to beat up on Rockwell, but like oftentimes you feel like the tactics are strong arm. You know what I mean? They're using these strong arm tactics to manage their accounts and stuff. But when I worked for this steel company, our distributor was really a huge advocate for us. And so we had the best pricing that we could possibly get. And the distributor is the one who did that for us. So anybody who's worked with Rockwell's got a shit ton of product codes. Okay. They have product families. So they have like a number. Let's say that number is like, say, 6 digits. 5 zeros and a 1 would be the product family. And maybe that product family is Compact Logics, right? Then underneath that product family is a list of all the products that go in that product family. So it would be like all of the IO cards, the power supplies, the backplanes, all that stuff, right? They have a product family that's power flex drives. They have a product family that's Stratix switches, right? So when you're a Rockwell vendor, when you're going to be using a lot of Rockwell products, each year you will tell Rockwell, or you'll tell your distributor, here's the quantity of the things I think I might buy this year from you guys. And then what they'll do is they'll work with Rockwell to negotiate a multiplier off of the list price for that product. So say they'll go and they'll say, I can get you 0.72 on this family of products. Okay. Most of the time when I worked for Nucor Steel, it was on the family level. Like our distributor was handling all of it. Hey, we're going to buy a bunch of Compact Logic stuff this year, and he'd get us the 0.72 on the full product family, right? I switched and I went to a tier 1 automotive supplier, which was about an hour and a half south, and I moved into a different AR. There was a different distributor in the region. So I still lived in the same house, but now instead of driving an hour north to go to work, I was driving 40 minutes south to go to work. And now I'm in a new AR with a completely different distributor. And I had insight into how Rockwell was doing their pricing that the people who I worked with in my new job had no idea about. The vendor, the sales guy who with the distributor had been the account manager for a decade. You know, it was all the classic shit, you know, buying guys lunch and golf clubs, and, you know, it was all grease and palms behind the scenes, and it's really fucked up. Well, anyway, I remember I was doing the bill of materials for a pin machine. So we were also an OEM. We were a tier 1 automotive supplier, but we designed and built our own equipment. And I was the engineer who was designing this pin machine. It was making the pins for chain link, for links and chains. And I quoted Compact Logic's family for like 30 machines. And I get back the quote from Rockwell, and I'm literally paying like 25% more than what I was paying I was buying twice as many in that family as I was for the steel company. And so I brought in the rep, and I asked him, I'm like, what kind of discounts are we getting? Like, what have we negotiated with you guys? And we're a machine builder, by the way. At Nucor Steel, we were not a machine builder. And that he got really pissed that I asked that question. Like, because I'm a new guy, and I'm like rocking the boat. Long story short, I go to our purchasing guy, and I said, you know, I've been going through everything that we've bought from Rockwell over the last 2 years. And by my calculation, based on where I just came from, we've overpaid by about $2 million. If you had the same agreements I had at Nucor Steel, where we weren't a machine builder, we would have spent $2 million less. Think about that. $2 million fucking dollars. So this escalated. This whole thing went way up the chain. It went to like the regional vice president in that Northeast region of, you know, the United States. Him, the distributor, you know, it was like Rockwell, the distributor. We had all these meetings in the boardroom and all that stuff. And I'm a very disagreeable guy. So if you lie to me, I'm going to call you out in front of everybody. I'll embarrass you. I'll humiliate you. I'll call you out. And that's exactly what I did. Let me say this. When it was all said and done, I got a lot of pushback from the engineers I worked with because they were buddies with this rep and stuff. But they were perfectly fine with our company spending millions of dollars more than we needed to. When it was all said and done, we had a different rep. We nearly ended up with a different distributor. But Rockwell fought tooth and nail to make sure that distributor stayed in that region. They fought tooth and fucking nail to keep that distributor there, even though that distributor had done us dirty. And there was no way, objectively, you could argue they didn't do us dirty. They did us dirty, okay? And the best case scenario is they did us dirty by omission. Like, so that is, they weren't going to bat for us the way the distributor I'd come from had. But because Rockwell organizes their ARs the way they do, you would never know. There's no competitor to tell you that you're getting ripped off in their eyes. Because Rockwell doesn't allow you to compete in a region. Okay. So when I would ask I went to Automation Fair, and, you know, I went with that Rockwell rep and everything. And I liked the guy a lot. This Italian sales guy, you know, he was like a greasy, slimy used car salesman type of guy. You know, he was a shit talker and blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is we overpaid by my calculations, $2 million over the last couple of years. Okay. Enough. They were more pissed off that it had been brought to light than it was that this is what was actually going on, because the regions were right next to each other. They knew full well that this steel manufacturer was getting this type of discount versus the tier 1 automotive supplier, which was getting a completely different one. And in many cases paying full list price for products that the tier 1 automotive supplier thought they were getting a discount on. That was the fucking crime. And they didn't know the difference because at this time, Rockwell didn't have that. There's a toolkit thing that they gave you on a CD where you could look at list prices and multipliers and stuff. That didn't exist yet. It was a spreadsheet. And if they had shared it with you, you would know. So that's just one example of where I was like, what? Rockwell did my company dirty. And because of that, they did the people I worked with dirty. Now, let me be fair to Rockwell here because I don't want to. I've had lots of good experiences with Rockwell, and there are many great products that I've worked with, that they've developed. Like, in fact, Asset Center. I think Asset Center is one of the best products that Rockwell's ever created. I'm actually disappointed that it didn't go. It didn't become a bigger product, right? I've had some really good experiences with Rockwell in my career, and I still use their products. Okay, but I don't disagree with the way that they operate I don't agree with the way they operate their business. And I mean, I'm not the only one. There are hundreds of thousands of people in our industry who have been wronged, who hate Rockwell. For years, I have been calling Rockwell out on this channel. This is the number of times anyone from Rockwell has ever come here to defend themselves. And that invitation is wide open. And the reason why is because they can't. That's why they won't come here. By the way, there's nobody in the community who ever says, you know what, I want to go on there and defend Rockwell. Let's go to JP Monas. So JP said that's how General Motors paid $6,000 for an L63. If you were a machine builder and not asking for SPRs, then you're not. Not your machine builder. That's how Rockwell set up the game. Orlando, from my experience, Rockwell does business agreements to use their products. Then engineers jump in and ask, why are we using Rockwell? That's my question. My question is, why does anyone need Rockwell today? Let me say this. Let me ask you this question. And this is really, and I'm going to get to the SESME partnership. I'm going to read it here in a second. What is the one product? Give me a product that Rockwell has that's best in class. It is the best product available on the market for its functional capability. And you guys can list them there if you want to. And the answer is, if you guys want my opinion, it's none. Rockwell doesn't have any product that's best in class. They've got some that are close. Like, I think the ControlLogix family, if we're just talking programmable logic controller and we're not talking edge computation that is on board, then ControlLogix platform is an exceptional platform. Okay? But is it best in class? It would be very difficult to make the argument that the ControlLogix platform is superior to, say, Bedrock Automation or to Opto22. It would be really, really hard to make that case. And by the way, moreover, it would be Rockwell would lose against Rockwell's going to lose against in any benchmarking. The ControlLogix platform is going to lose in any benchmarking against Bedrock or against Opto22, or moreover, probably even Phoenix Contact. They're going to lose in benchmarking. Rockwell has no best-in-class product. They have no best-in-class. Siemens does. I mean, when it comes to motion, it is really fucking hard to find. I mean, you can argue that Mitsubishi is on par with Siemens in motion control. But it's pretty hard to make the argument that Siemens isn't best in class in motion control. Okay, it's pretty hard not to make that argument. You could make an argument against it, but Rockwell isn't best in class in anything. And that's the crime. The only thing Rockwell's really good at doing is leveraging their market share for more sales. Brian Pryby, AOIs from years of private development. Yeah. Add-on instructions. So let's give Rockwell credit where credit is due. Add-on instructions within the ControlLogix platform was a game changer. right? AOIs were a great way of taking Rockwell partner products, right? I can't remember what they call it. Rockwell Partner Solutions, Enterprise Solutions, whatever it is. Mettler Toledo, right, can write their own add-on instructions for their scales that you can just drop a Mettler Toledo AOI into a Control Logics or a Compact Logics PLC, and you'll be able to communicate and control that scale natively without having to write any of that logic. You just ship the AOI with it. Add-on instructions were a game changer. Okay, they were absolutely a game changer. Add-on instructions are 20 years old. I mean, that's my point.